your predictions for 2023 college football. A little early to be talking about 2023 with the championship just wrapping up this week, but let's go ahead and get into our top five like our predictions for the top five teams in college football for 2023. Obviously, a lot of turnover every year when it comes to college. Kids graduate, kids transfer, kids drop out if you want to go that route too. Um, but there are definitely some teams that were at the top this year that are going to remain at the top probably next year. One of those teams being Ohio State, in my opinion. They're my pick as of right now to be the number one team in the country next year. That's assuming CJ Stroud doesn't come back. If CJ Stroud does come back, then I think it's even more of a lock that Ohio State um, is the best team in the nation next year. But even with CJ Stroud coming back, I mean, they have seven offensive starters coming back, they have seven defensive starters coming back. One of those offensive starters includes Marvin Harrison Jr., arguably the greatest wide receiver in the country in college football right now. So that would be my pick as of like today to be the number one team in college football right now next year. What do you think, Siege? Who's your number one team coming out?
I think it has to be Georgia. I don't see just because I think they're the new. I think they're the new standard. I think everybody's still. I mean, people still look at Alabama as being the standard, but I think Alabama is starting to not necessarily fall off, but fall behind the standard that Georgia is setting. Georgia's won back to back national championships. I don't know how you could knock them for winning another one and and keep them out of the number one spot. So I think they'll be number one heading into the next year. The other thing is um, with what was I trying to think or what was I trying to say? Uh, I forget. I don't know what I was gonna say. But the other thing is, like with the SEC, you can have two teams be in the top four all season, and then they have to play each other in the SEC championship because they don't play each other in the regular season. And that's the case with like Georgia and Alabama. They could be number one and two all year, go play each other in the championship, and still be number one and two heading into the playoffs. So um, that being said, I don't think Alabama necessarily is my number two. I think Ohio State's probably my number two, and then Alabama following them up after that. But I have some hot takes for my four and five teams and teams on the bubble.
Okay, yeah, we'll get to that in a second. Just to, I guess, wrap up my top three then. I do have Georgia at number two, much for the same reason you said. Georgia is the standard right now, especially in the SEC. I just think that Ohio State was so close to beating them this year, and I believe they have more starters coming back. Yeah, they have more starters on both sides of the ball coming. Only one. They have seven as opposed to six for Georgia. So I guess that's the main reason I have Ohio State like jumping them is because it was so close this year, and they are bringing more starters back than Georgia is. But I do have Georgia slotted in there at number two, and then I have Bama at three as well. So our top three are the same, just in different order. What about you, Aaron? Who are your top three teams over there?
My top one is, I mean, obviously Georgia. Um, the counterpoint to kind of what Siege said, you can knock them for not necessarily not being the national champions, but for the impact of the players that they lose. But they brought in a lot of good commits, so I think they do deserve to stay at the one. And then my two is actually Alabama. Shocker, shocker, SEC bias here. And then I have Ohio State at three.
Okay, so we all three have the same top three teams. And yeah, I mean, I don't really see, as of right now, of course, a lot of things can change between now and then, but I don't see anybody else jumping those three teams. I know ESPN had Michigan as the number three team and Florida State as the number four, both above Alabama. I am assuming Jim Harbaugh is leaving, um, but going off of the fact that he's still there and nothing is set in stone, I do have Michigan at number 4 going into next year. I think they could, even if Jim Harbaugh doesn't come back, still meet that expectation. JJ McCarthy's coming back. He was obviously a huge reason they were so successful this past year. They're also bringing back their running back Blake Corum. He decided he was going to return to Michigan this year as well. So it's very possible that we're going to see a very similar Michigan team next year that we saw this year, and that's why I have them slated in as number 4, whether Jim Harbaugh comes back or not. I think Jim Harbaugh is the glue for that team, so I do think he makes a big difference. If he does come back, I think they could jump up even higher. If he doesn't come back, I think they could fall. But I think they just in general have the talent to where they should be in the conversation for the playoffs next year, with or without Harbaugh. It's just I think Harbaugh is so important to that not franchise because it's a college team, but to that team. That if he does leave, I could still see Michigan falling further back into like more irrelevant territory, I guess you could say. And then my number 5, I have USC Trojans. A lot of people probably wouldn't like that take, but because Caleb Williams is coming back and they still have Lincoln Riley, I just think that offense is going to be so good that they could match scores with just about anybody, assuming the defense holds up. So I just have a lot of faith in that program over there as well. Lincoln Riley, in his second year at USC, should continue to develop those players, develop that team, make it a more competitive atmosphere. They haven't had a lot of competitiveness before Lincoln Riley. They're starting to get back, like since Reggie Bush days and the Matt Leinart days, but ever since Lincoln Riley stepped in as head coach at the beginning of the season, it seems like he has brought a whole new culture into that organization, and just really injected that whole team with some extra juice, I guess. So, Siege, let's hear your spicy takes for 4 and 5.
So my 4 is Michigan. They're bringing back a lot of players. I don't think they're necessarily losing too much. So that's my number 4. My number 5, though, I have a lot of like bubble teams. I want to see what Tennessee can do with this new quarterback. He showed that he has what it takes in their bowl game. I mean, he was slinging the ball all over the place. I'm really excited to watch him next year. So I have like a group of teams that's Tennessee, USC, and this one might throw people off a little bit, but Florida State. Florida State, I mean, they went 10-3 this year. I have Florida State winning the ACC this upcoming year. I think that they're bringing in a lot of really good talent. I think that they will match up well against a Clemson team that is showing signs of falling off. That could have been just because of their quarterback play this year. But I think Florida State wins the ACC this year, and I think you might be surprised where they end up in the first poll that gets released before the season. I think they'll be in the top 10. One thing I want to touch on real quick, I don't think there's going to be a single Big 12 team that's inside the top 10 at the start of next year. The one that might be close is Kansas State, but I think the lowest team that you'll see is going to be in the mid to high teens for the Big 12. That sucks for me just because I'm a TCU fan and a Big 12 fan at heart, but yeah, I don't think any of the Big 12 teams will even have any respect after what happened in the national championship to be in the top 10 at the start of next year. So that'll be an interesting little deal to kind of look at.
Yeah, and just kind of backing up what you said. I mean, ESPN does have Florida State as the preseason, as of right now, as the number 4 ranked team going into next year. So your Florida State pick seems like it's a pretty solid one. And then also your Big 12 argument is also backed up by ESPN. Their highest ranking Big 12 team they have for next year is TCU at number 12. So both are very likely to happen. I don't know
Is
much about Florida State or the Big 12 or really college football in general. I'm kind of talking out my
yeah.
ass right now. So
Is is that the way too early poll that you're
yes,
looking at?
yes,
Okay,
it is.
I didn't even I did get a chance to look at that. I didn't even know that they posted that.
Yeah, they literally
But
just posted, I think, yesterday, maybe today.
okay, so that's not yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, they posted it yesterday. But what about you, Aaron? Who's your 4 and 5?
Four, kind of fairly standard. Michigan, like Siege said, they're bringing a lot of crucial pieces back. I do think a lot of it kind of hinges on whether Harbaugh comes back or not. Yeah, just kind of standard there. But then, like Siege, I do have a couple of bubble teams. One of them being LSU. They kind of struggled early on in the season last year, but Brian Kelly really turned it around. They finished strong, and I believe we're like quote unquote kind of in the college football playoff, but not really conversation. Um, Another one is USD. Caleb Williams coming back. That's big for them. They're explosive. They could easily win the Pac-12 over there, and then Tennessee's another one that would be exciting to see. Like if they can build on the momentum that they had last year.
Yeah, sorry, I'm doing the Brian Kelly dance over here for when he recruits players. But no, Tennessee. You both mentioned Tennessee. Tennessee was one I thought about pushing up a little further, maybe making them my number 5. I think the only reason I picked USC over them was because of the consistency of the quarterback coming back, Caleb Williams coming back and leading that unit for the second straight year, along with his head coach who he's had for going into his third straight year. So that's the only reason I had USC over uh, Tennessee. But Tennessee was another team I thought about. Excuse me, jeez. Tennessee was another team I thought about sliding up to the top 5, or at least kind of like both you said, they're kind of on the bubble, like 7, 8, 6, 7, 8 spot for me. So yeah, I don't know if there's really anything else we can talk about with college football. I mean,
I have a question kind of geared towards Siege here.
okay, okay.
What do we think about Texas? I mean, they got Arch Manning. Do we think he'll redshirt, or you think he'll play for his first year?
That's a good question.
I think after the year that they have a very serious quarterback battle in the spring and the I think is he early enrollee? Do we know?
I don't know.
I want to say I saw that he's enrolling early, but so I think you have a very intense quarterback battle to see who gets the starting job. Um, I I don't see the upside of necessarily. I mean, if he loses the job, obviously, I think there's an upside to redshirting him. But then again, if you redshirt him, maybe he leaves. Who knows? You know, I mean, you never know with the transfer portal these days. If kids aren't getting an immediate starting role, they could just dip out on you, and you just don't. I mean, you can't do anything about it. So um, it'll be interesting to see. I think Texas. I think their system would work really well if they had him at the helm because he's very sold on being a pocket quarterback, and Texas has really good running backs usually. I mean, historically they have really good running backs. So I think that a pocket quarterback would suit their needs well, and him just like committing to that role as opposed to Hudson Card, and he's like, yeah, I want to throw the ball, I want to be a pocket quarterback, but I'm also gonna like scramble out of the pocket a little bit, and then I don't know. I think it would be good for their system if he started, but I don't know. Only time will tell, I guess.
Do we think they could end up being like a top 10 team next year?
No, I think they're overrated all year or every year.
Yeah.
Um, ever since
Hey, but they're
it
back.
was, yeah, ever since he said, what,
The
who said that again?
Sam Allen
Sam Ellinger?
again after he
Yeah.
beat. I think it was was it when he beat us in the Texas Bowl, or was it the year after?
Ti-
No, and you said it probably at the beginning of the season.
No, it was
I don't
after they
even
won a bowl
remember.
game, but whatever, it didn't matter.
Yeah, but ever since then, like they haven't been able to do anything. They're always overrated at the beginning of the year, and they play down to the level of their competition too. Like the usually the games that they play the best is when they're playing OU, and that's their biggest rivalry
Yeah,
game of the year.
the old rival.
So I don't know. They kind of do the thing where they play down to the competition and don't play their game um, like they should, and use what they're good at to beat teams. And so I don't know. I don't think they'll end up as a top 10 team next year.
Yeah, I just remember Sam Allinger after winning a bowl game. I can't remember what bowl game it was, but I just remember him being like, "We're back," and then they weren't. So I don't know. I guess my question to you was like my follow up, but you kind of answered it already. Was that if Arch were to redshirt his freshman year, would he consider leaving? But I mean, I guess that's all only up to him to decide. And you kind of already hit it on that. So you never know with those kind of kids, especially the ones that are kind of propped up from a young age to be the guy.
Yeah.
If he's not the guy from day one, it could be interesting to see where if he may consider transferring.
Yeah, and
Especially if he
there's
promises anything.
yeah, and there's one more notable point. His like visit was during the TCU game. So TCU beats Texas. I think Arch might have seen that as okay. I have a chance to immediately start and make an impact on this team, as opposed to maybe like, oh, they're not very good. Maybe I should shop elsewhere. I think he's seeing it as he has a chance to make an immediate impact as a freshman on this team,
Right.
and that's why he's so set on going to Texas. And so I think that's an interesting thing too, because if he sees it as a chance to be on the field as a freshman, then he's going to take that and run with it and put as much effort to get that job as he possibly can. So I'm excited to watch him play, and hopefully he lives up to his name down there. I don't like Texas, but I mean, I don't have any hard feelings towards the Mannings as a whole. So I hope he does well. But yeah, I don't see them finishing in the top 10 next year necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe he was looking at that game like, ooh, redshirt year at Texas, and then go lead TCU to a national championship against Georgia. I don't know, but who knows? Who knows what he was thinking?